welcome back to Man the Helm podcast. Today I am joined by Seth Rosenbloom. How's it going, sir?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, dude, absolutely, man. So I kind of started this podcast because I wanted to get back into like the gear side of things, the playing side of things, and kind of reconnect with the community of musicians. Because I always think it's funny. You think about like outside looking in, it's like this huge community of people, but really it's a pretty tight knit group. You know, when you
Yeah.
really kind of break it down. But for those that might not know who you are, let's just get a little bit of your backstory first. You know, where you grew up and, you know, how you started getting into music, and then we can kind of go from there.
So I grew up right outside Boston, about 15, 20 minutes west of Boston, and the music thing started early. My dad was, he's been retired for a few years now, but he was the concertmaster of the Boston Ballet Orchestra, played with the Pops, with the symphony, all of that, and my parents had actually met in music school at SUNY Buffalo, so both violin players. And so I started playing violin when I was about 3 or 4,
Oh,
really,
wow.
like before I remember.
Yeah.
And played violin all growing up, but also had other music around the house. My mom was a huge Beatles fan, saw the Beatles on their first US tour. She was a big Motown fan. My grandmother was a big Elvis fan. So I was getting that stuff too, and I always had a real interest in the guitar, but yeah, then started playing guitar when I was 11. Um,
Nice.
and kind of went through all the different influences, genre obsessions that you go through before kind of settling where I am now, somewhere in the blues rock world. But yeah, grew up Boston area, and I lived in Nashville briefly. I lived in Raleigh for a couple of years, and then I've been back up here for quite a few years and have settled kind of out in Western Mass towards Vermont, New Hampshire area. Yeah.
Nice. I think that's a common trend with all guitar players, especially if we go through that that genre kind of cycle. You know what I mean?
I certainly did. Yeah, the early stuff, it was, you're 12, 13, 14, it's whoever can play fast is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thing that you want. So like I got the Metallica bug big time, and that the first like guitar players I was really into, Satriani, and then like Petrucci, and caught the Dream Theater bug and all the prog stuff, and it took a little while later to kind of settle where I am now.
Well, I think it's an important thing though too. It's like I teach a little bit at a mom and pop shop, and I always love the younger students of this is all I like, this is all I want to play, this is all I want to do, sort of thing that you encounter with some, at least my younger students.
Sure.
And I think that part of that process is really good because there's a lot of super awesome fundamental baseline knowledge you can gain just out of those things at a very low level, you know, that you can add into that repertoire when you do, if you do happen to settle into something a little different genre speaking, you know what I mean?
I think it's also the self-discovery
Yeah.
of, I because I really struggled with it for a while, of when I was, I think like 14 or 15, I was playing town baseball in the town I grew up in, because before I wanted to be a musician, I wanted to be a baseball player. And one of the dads of the other kids knew I played guitar, and he was like, hey, you should come out to this blues jam. And it was like a Monday night blues jam about 5 minutes from, my parents' house. And started going, and I had already been exposed to a decent amount of blues. I mean, very early on. I kind of got, I think, the same entry point that a lot of people do, of Cream and Zeppelin and some of the British blues and kind of more blues rock. And started going weekly, started going to other jams, started playing a lot of blues, but then like my guitar heroes, and in turn a lot of my friends in the industry, were more like the rock bands or the shredders and all that stuff, and I was like, that's the cool thing where all my friends are doing it, but this other thing feels way more authentic to me.
Yeah.
So it was a journey in self-discovery there of it. It was like, you have the thing, if all your friends are doing something, you kind of want to do that, but is that authentic for me or not?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things too that started to permeate, especially with the younger students that I have, because it is the same. Like I remember going to jams and guitar shops and stuff like that, and when I was a kid, in that early 12, 13 age range, if you couldn't shred, you weren't the cool kid. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like you
Yeah.
had to get it. But I'm seeing the same thing happen now because everybody's so flooded with the 30-second Instagram reels or TikTok reels of just the monsters that you just see. You know what I mean? But the thing that I've always tried to relay to my students is like, dude, there's like no context behind that, man. Like you don't know how long that person's been playing. You don't even know how long how many takes it took them to do that
You don't know
30
how many
second.
takes, and you also don't know if it's real. Because
Exactly.
there's
Yeah.
so much stuff out there now where it's like, and I'll leave names out of it, but you see it at conventions, you see it all over the place. These people that are blowing up on social media, and they, in person, it's like, can you do it live? Can
Yeah.
you do it where you don't have editing? Can you do it where you're not miming? And for the amount of people that are doing that, there are so many absolute monsters who can do it. But it's
Oh yeah.
also, you're right, it's like a 15 to 30-second clip of someone playing something ridiculous. Like I've gotten to the point where I just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless it has musical context, it's like, what is that doing for me? Because there's so many players that I love, and I cannot I gotta totally credit this kind of quote to the fantastic Greg Koch, because he was last summer. We were both artists at Andy Wood, who I think you've had on this, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
At Andy Wood's Woodshed Experience, and Greg was finishing up a class before me and was kind of talking about all the great players out there, and I've never been able to articulate it as well as he did, but talking about Albert King, who Greg and I both, I mean, for me, I know one of my all-time favorite guitar players. I'd listen to Albert over almost anyone, and he basically said, are there a million players out there that can play faster, have a deeper bag of tricks, have a deeper vocabulary than Albert King? Absolutely. Are there any I'd rather listen to? No.
Yep.
Because it's, what are you saying with the thing? And there are so many guys out there with crazy chops who say a ton with it. I mean, Guthrie Govan was an absolute obsession for me my teenage years, and then I think about the guys that I really dig and have been so instrumental to developing my sound and stuff. And it's like, you take an Eric Johnson, chops off the planet. I've never heard the guy play something that's not musical using them. Like everything he's doing is so musical. You take actually kind of in that same range. Are you familiar with the guy? He's an Austin guy who's been playing when Eric goes out as a four-piece, been playing guitar in Eric's band.
I don't believe so.
So it's a guy down in Austin, best guitar player that I wasn't aware of that I've heard in probably the last 5-10 years. Guy Dave Scher down in Austin.
Okay, cool.
Absolute monster musician. Another guy, like, he can play anything. But he plays more musical than everyone, and that's what makes him great. It's not the chops. And it's like, there are so many examples of great players who don't necessarily have all the facility, all the licks, all the chops, but it's like they know how to take what they do and use it to the fullest extent, fullest impact.
Dude, it's about being honest and authentic and saying what you want with the instrument. That is what is going to make the most impact to the audience that you're trying to reach, man. Like at the end of the day, I've broken this down to students and friends before. It's like, if we just took a subset of the United States and just looked at how many people play an instrument. Now take those people that play an instrument and how many people are actually doing something professional working with that instrument. That's a pretty steep drop off right there. You know what
Yep,
I mean?
without doubt.
And then you take those people that are actually working. How many people are at that like pro level success? It's another huge steep drop off. But the
And
common
also, what is that definition nowadays?
that's very true. I was about to say that too.
One that's just shifted so much.
Yeah. But my point for all these guys, the kids and some of my friends and stuff, it's like the people that you think are good, it's not their technical prowess, so to speak. I mean, that's there because when you play an instrument for decades, yes, you're going to be technically good at the instrument, but it's the way that they're expressing the emotion that's coming through the instrument, the way that they're, you know, the musicality of the melodies, the harmonies, the rhythms they're coming up with. Like that's what you like,
Yeah.
that
And
individuality.
with how much teaching I do, I find that, more often than not, new student comes to me and the first thing that they're asking about or wanting is it's like, how do I break out of the pentatonic? How do I play more all over the neck? How do I increase my vocabulary? And all that stuff's great. I always start with, okay, what do you sound like right now? And what can you do taking everything you already have and using it more effectively?
Yeah.
Because, it's similar to, I don't know, like a painter and a huge palette of colors. It's like, if you can't do something with fewer options, just having more options isn't immediately going to make it better.
Right.
Often it actually makes it worse because it gets into like the options paralysis thing where I know, you know, not that I'll do this live, but I'll do this a lot in my practice. It's like if I feel like I don't have anything to play or don't have anything to say, there are a couple ways that can go. It's like, yeah, sometimes do I sit down, what am I digging, listening to, try to transcribe something and get something? Sure. But often I do the exact opposite. And it's like, okay, let me give myself 4 notes. I can't leave those 4 notes. Can I play something that works, sounds good, and it pushes that creativity because you've just taken all, the options you did have away. And now you just have to try to make something out of what you got.
Yeah. No, that's a great piece of advice because that's one of the things I tell those students that have been playing for those couple of years. It's like they feel like, based off of what they see, outside perspective, that they're not very good, which I always try to tell them that good is a relative term. I don't know what you mean. What you mean is good and what I mean is good could be 2 completely different things.
Sure.
But the same thing, man. Like, what are you comfortable with? Okay, now that you're comfortable, you know what to do here. Now let's, like you said, let's real hyper focus on just this very specific part and see if we can be musical with it.
And I think it's in both my playing and I very much talk about this a lot in any teaching I do. It's like all that matters is the application. What can you do with something? It's not, I see way too much guitar instructional content material in general where it's like so backwards of it treats the whole thing just like knowledge acquisition.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't care if you know all these different scales, all these different, chord shapes, all that stuff. Who cares? Is it furthering your musical goals and your statement of what you want to say?
Yeah.
And I think, I see so much like cookie cutter kind of one size fits all thing. And it's like, what I need to do, what I do, is very different from if someone wants to play bebop guitar, or if someone wants to play, you know, bluegrass, or if someone wants to play, you know, every kind of genre and everything has a different set of things that really go into that. I mean, I know that going back to the violin stuff, a lot of the theory knowledge and harmony knowledge that I picked up as a kid, it's like that didn't exactly connect to the stuff I was doing as a guitar player. Because
Sure.
as a violinist, how much are you thinking about chords?
Mm-hmm.
Never,
Yeah.
or very, very rarely. And it makes a difference.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do for the dumbing down thing is just have a droning chord and see what we can do just over that chord. And once they start to realize the almost limitless possibilities, especially the type of way you voice a chord, you know what I mean? Where if I just have the root and fifth, it's like, dude, you're in charge now of how you want to make this. You know what I mean? So it's an
Without a doubt.
awesome it's an awesome experience to see that light bulb go off on their head when they're just like, oh, now I could, like, you give them a little bit of context, a little bit of foundational knowledge, and now it's just off the races. You know what I mean?
And it's funny sometimes those situations where you can do kind of whatever you want
Yeah.
are even harder, because now again you have all the options in
Option.
the world
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you know, you play with certain keyboard players who are notorious for just using as close to all 10 fingers as possible and playing
For
really
sure.
dense chords, and you don't have that many options. It's like they're setting up that tonality for you and kind of what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I always love playing with extremely better musicians, especially on rhythm sections, because now I really have to focus, man. The only time I've ever had like a really bad jamming experience is what we just talked about, where I feel like I was kind of put into a hole and I wasn't allowed to get out of it by a keyboard player. You know what I
Sure.
mean? It was kind
That
of
can happen.
yeah, it was kind of like a weird thing where it's just like, oh man, now I feel like now I have to do this now. I kept feeling like that. It's like, oh, now I have to do this, you know.
Yeah.
But
Oh
but
yeah,
no,
nothing better than playing with a great rhythm section. That's
yeah.
the best.
Well, and I I really focused a lot on rhythm playing as a teenager, just because the guy I was playing with, he was a singer and whatnot. And we were doing a lot of singer songwriter stuff. So that was really my main focus, was trying to find unique rhythms and stuff like that. And I didn't realize till years later that I can utilize those rhythms in any sort of application. You know, I'm not going to be playing them in, you know, those open cowboy chord positions anymore. Now
Sure.
I can use it in phrasing. Now I can use it in, you know, creating interesting melody lines, or whatever it is that I'm trying to come up with, you know. But that was one of the biggest impacts of like understanding, like, and having a groove too on top of being musical. Like, dude, that's what people want to hear. You know what I mean?
And it's funny because I feel like I was the opposite, where I neglected the rhythm side of things so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I wanted to play those guitar solos, and I was mailing in for a lot of years the rhythm. And then you come to that realization of, you know, when I was kind of early mid 20s doing a lot more of playing for other people, it's like if you have two guitar players and one is a great soloist and a mediocre rhythm guitar player, the other is a fantastic rhythm guitar player and even a bad soloist.
Yeah.
The fantastic rhythm guitar player is the guy working.
Yeah.
Because even on, you know, my gig, where it's a, you know, blues rock guitar driven gig, often trio, sometimes 4-piece, it's like I'm still playing rhythm probably 60+% of the night, because
Sure.
you got to play the song.
Yeah.
It's like and you don't want songs in terms of the delivery of the song or the composition of the song to feel like it's just a bed or a introduction for a guitar solo.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think there's a lot of guitar-driven music that can get into that territory where it's like, okay, everything's culminating to the guitar solo, and then you think about the all-time great guitar solos, whether it be blues, rock, whatever, and I have my personal Mount Rushmore, and the common denominator is that it's a great song where the solo's serving the song, not the other way around.
yeah. Yeah, that was that's a lesson that still keep driving home with a lot of friends my age. The fill-in gigs or whatever you get. It's just like, dude, if you're there to work, man, you're there to play the music and serve the artist that you're playing with.
Yeah.
That is essentially what you are doing. Now, if you get your 15 seconds for a song or two, awesome. But at the end of the day, the audience that you play for, at least in my experience, they really connect with when you take maybe a chorus melody that is really prevalent through the song and you riff off of that. You take what you already have there and kind of add a little bit of flair to it, and
Without
you're
a doubt.
good. you know it's like the
Yeah,
easiest go-to. you know
and it's a thing, like, even on a gig, like when I'm doing my solo gigs, it's so much of like, you better make the song feel good before you just go off on a tangent on a 5-minute guitar solo. It's like,
yeah,
sure, that's fun, but you better set it up where the song's great and it's already kind of got that hook in someone before you can do all that.
absolutely. It's peop most people, and I hate to generalize, but most people that consume music are consuming things that are awesome melodies, catchy hooks, and good rhythms. I mean, I like I said, I don't want to generalize, but that most people that are consuming Western music, that is the quote unquote template. You know,
No, and I think, I mean, even in terms of a song, it's like when I write, I do try to always think of it from the side, because I think more often than not it's true that you take a truly great song, you could almost put it in any genre and it's going to work.
yeah,
And
sure,
you can strip it back where it's like the guitar tone or the guitar riff shouldn't necessarily overpower the melody, the lyrical content, whatever it is, where I think that so many great songs, it's like you hand someone an acoustic guitar and their voice, or a piano and their voice. It's still going to sound like a great song when you strip all that production, when you strip all the kind of bells and whistles and tricks
yeah.
off of it.
Well, that's a good segue. So, like for instance, with you, when it comes to the writing process, like where do you kind of like springboard from, or is it kind of different inspiration every time?
Yeah, really relevant question right now. I'm writing for new record, going in mid-October to start the new record. I think doing about half of it in October. But yeah, I find that musically, it's often those earworms that kind of just get stuck in your head. You're walking around and something will kind of just pop in, and I always try to be good about documenting that stuff, whether it's a melody, whether it's chord progression I'm hearing, just go into voice note on my iPhone and sing it in if I have to.
Dude, I have
Um,
so many of those. It's not even funny. So I'm right
that's
there
me
with you,
too.
man.
I keep a video folder and a thing, and it's like, whether it's a little riff, whether it's um, chord progression, whether it's a melody, always try to just document them, and then I'll often go back to them, and it's like, okay, I'm going to use that as kind of a springboard. Where do I see this going?
Okay.
Um, I'm bad about just writing all the time. I really struggle with that. I write for a project more often than not. Of it's, I'm doing a new record, so I better, you know, better write.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of co-writing in terms of especially lyrics, music too, but um, usually, more often than not, I'll at least come to the session with a musical idea, but lyric-wise, I think just with my background that I was a later singer, and
Mm.
I was also so heavily listening to instrumental music for so many years where I don't think I paid nearly enough attention to lyrical content that I mean I've worked a ton with one co-writer up here in Massachusetts, Sonia Ray Taylor. She used to be down in Nashville, and she's a fantastic writer. Um, and yeah, I don't know what I'd do without her a lot for lyrics when I get in a jam of it's that's an art in and of itself that is not the same as just, can I hear a melody? Can I come up with something compelling there? But you got to have that balance, or not even balance. You have to have both. You can't
Yeah.
just have goofy lyrics with it, or it doesn't really work.
Oh, I get it, man. I totally get it. When it comes to writing, though, I know you said the lyric side of things are always a little I don't, not a struggle, but it's a
More
little
challenging. Yeah.
more challenging. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, when you're coming up with stuff like that, is it sort of like the same thing where like something kind of pops into your head, like an emotion that you're feeling, and kind of go that way with the lyric writing,
It's
or
a
how does
mix.
that
Like
process?
some of the songs, because there are plenty of songs where I've written them on my own and it's come out, and often those have come from a specific influence or experience. And
Okay,
it's like,
sure.
okay, I'm going to write about that thing. I mean,
Hmm.
I've said this, and I was on another podcast kind of around the time the last record came out. My girlfriend was in the next room, and she hated when I said this. But it's like all you need for a great blues record is a bad breakup, and that record will like. And she said you're going to have to find some new inspiration. I was like, I'll try, but press the panic button if needed.
Right.
But yeah, it's like I've been trying to. I think those are often easy to write and within the genre so common
Sure.
that I've tried to more and more think about other influences, other experiences, other takes on things, and often it's like, yeah, into a writing session, even if I'm co-writing, it's like, okay, what is kind of the idea here? What's the story? And as much as possible, try to tell that story about something, not just pick it out of thin air, but it's like, what is this about? Where's it coming from?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with the way that people can attach their own personal experiences and emotions, it's so important to have that's almost storytelling aspect to songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It'll really not only be genuine to what you're writing, but it's going to be able to connect with the audience that's consuming it at the
Right.
same time.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, lyrics though are really rough though sometimes, man. So I completely understand, needing the the extra little help with the co-writing thing, man. Because there's been plenty of times where I've just had a whole song that just kind of spilled out, and I had it and I was super happy with it and I was like, man, this is great. There's other times where I've had one line that I'm like, that's an awesome hook, and now I'm stuck. you
Right.
know?
I have it all the time. Similarly to the voice notes and the videos, it's like I keep just in the notes section. It's like here are lyrical ideas, whether it be a theme or something, and then at least when it is time to sit down and write, have some ideas to draw on and some things
Yeah.
to go back to.
Yeah. Well, so you were more kind of started off when with the more heavier prog stuff, and we kind of touched on it a little bit. But was there like a moment, or maybe a couple moments, where you finally realized that you were going to kind of settle more into that blues sort of genre, or was it kind of just a
In
slow burn
terms
sort
of
of thing?
finally settling in, it was more of a slow burn, and it was more of a what actually feels authentic when I do it, and what feels like I'm doing it because it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's not me. It's like, and I still love listening to a lot of that stuff. It's just, it's not me. It's not authentic for me to be the shredder. It never really felt authentic. The blues thing was kind of a multi-year process because I wouldn't say that I totally abandoned kind of the shreddier stuff till
Sure.
early 20s. Um, right when I started playing, I mean, it'll age me or unage me a bit. I mean, I just turned 32, but I started playing because saw School of Rock in theaters, and it's like I want to do that. That's awesome. Had the soundtrack, and that soundtrack had, I think, Immigrant Song by Zeppelin. It had Sunshine of Your Love by Cream. They talked about Hendrix in the movie, and it's um, a bunch of AC/DC stuff, and like Angus is one of my favorite rock guitar players ever because it's a great blues player who's just a little angrier.
Right, right. Yeah.
A lot of the stuff, like the "You Shook Me All Night Long" solo, is one of the all-time best. So I had that, and I remember getting, I think, like a best hits Cream record. I think got Zeppelin one and liked that. One of the biggest turning points of just thinking blues was cool and not something that just because I thought it's similar to jazz and it's quiet and
Yeah.
I hadn't seen a blues show. And when I was, I think, 13, was in the midst of like Dream Theater was favorite band out there, and they were coming through Boston to the Orpheum Theater. Asked my parents if I can go. My parents said, "No way, you're going alone to a show at a theater at 13." My
Right.
mom said, "I tell you what, I'll take you. I'll buy you tickets if you go to any show that I pick." And my parents were definitely trying to provide some influence away from the hard rock and metal stuff.
That's fair.
Yeah, and she saw an article in the Boston Globe, up and coming blues guitar player at Sculler's Jazz Club. Sculler's is still there, but they moved it downstairs. It's at the DoubleTree Hotel right outside Boston, and it was used to be upstairs on the second floor, held maybe 180 people. Weird, like beams in the middle, like it
Oh
was.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was awesome. Little tables, dark jazz club. And I remember I was not excited about going to this show. I was like, I'm going to tough it out so I can go see Dream Theater. Well, it was Joe Bonamassa circa, this was 2006 or so.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. With a Marshall Stack in there. And I still remember he closed out the night with cover Jeff Beck band Blues Deluxe, and I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. And of those two shows, that's the one that had way more impact on me. The Dream Theater show was great. I've seen Dream Theater a ton of times, but
Oh yeah.
it was like seeing Joe Blues Trio, tiny jazz club where you're 15 feet from the stage, loud, awesome, and it's like, oh, that's cool. That was kind of the start of it, of like, okay, this is something that I want to do.
Yeah. Well, I I think it's funny because like we kind of talked about earlier, I think we all kind of go through those cycles of, what we're really into. And it's one of those funny things now is I'm kind of in the opposite of what the kids, what I should have done as a kid, quote unquote, should have. Now I'm trying to practice the shreddy stuff,
Sure.
which is hilarious because all my friends, and I'm 34, so not too far off from where you're
Yeah.
at, but all my friends are trying on the rhythm stuff now. So now it's just like we have this back and forth now, dude. It's just like, okay, man, I'm gonna help you out. You're gonna help me out, and we're all gonna work this out together, dude. You know, it's a funny thing that I don't know why that happened. I was really trying to think critically about that the other day, and what I think it was, my dad listened to so much Steely Dan in the house.
So you get a lot of Larry Carlton, you get a lot of, all those great session guitar players and
Yeah.
guys who could lay down the groove, lay down everything.
So I really think that's where it came from. That initial, like, in that infancy of like the toddler to, adolescent years of always hearing that all the time, and others like that sort of genre of music.
Yeah.
So it kind of came full circle for me for about a year or two ago when I kind of had that aha moment of like, oh, well, that's probably why. I guess I never really thought about it like that before. Yeah. But no, that's one thing I always go back to too, man. It's just like I think about how I can make, if I'm playing with a singer, how I can make that the best I can for that individual, and then how I can also make something interesting for myself, not selfishly, but just to enhance the song a little bit. You know
Sure.
what I mean? But it's an interesting thing as guitar players, especially, that we still, I still see it amongst people my age too, of this like comparison syndrome that happens between other guys and girls and stuff in the musical community. And I've just never really understood that, because I hate to harp on it again, man, but it's definitely the case. It's the honest and authentic that make it through the white noise, so to speak. You
Sure.
know, the
Right.
licks and the tricks are awesome little licks and tricks to do in between the main bulk of the musicality.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. Or to post your 10-second clip on Instagram and TikTok, and it'll do that. But
Yeah.
it's the content and the what do you have to say at the end of
Yeah.
the day? You just have tricks, or do you have a statement?
See, and that's the first time I heard that, to bring up Andy Wood again. That's the first time I ever heard that, and that really hit me hard, because then I was like, man, I like had to scope out and like really like think about what that means as a guitar player. You know what I mean? And it's such an important thing, I think, in like that self-discovery of being a musician, of like, what do I want to have as a statement on this instrument? What does that even mean to me?
Andy and I've talked a lot about that. I mean, Andy, I consider one of my oldest friends in the industry. I was at the first clinic I think Andy ever taught, which was 2009. So I was
Oh wow,
I was
yeah.
I was a 16-year-old kid. So we've known each other for 15 years or so. And yeah, we've had a lot of discussions about that. And it's like, whatever it is, it's like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he has a great new record that just came out. I've been listening a ton to it.
Oh, dude, I've been I've unhealthy amount of times I've listened to that record so far.
I
So,
had heard quite a bit of it before, and we did a couple of little runs this year together. Did one up here in the Northeast. He had a Sur Clinic tour, and I think it was like, I know one of them was Charlotte. I forget where the other was, but then he was doing a Friday night right outside Boston at Matt's Music, and I said to him, it's like, are you just going home Saturday? And he's like, yeah, clinic tour's over. I'm like, you want to do a couple shows on the back end? We'll use my rhythm section. And so we did New York and Boston up here in April, and then did just late June did Raleigh, Wilmington, and Nashville, which was a
Yep.
blast.
well, and I was really disappointed, man. I was trying so hard to get off that day when you guys played at the Cannery down in Nashville, man, and just couldn't swing it, man.
It happens. It
the
was a fun show. It
Ah,
was
dude,
really fun. I know there was video taken of a lot of it, so I think
Oh, yeah.
Andy might
Yeah.
be cooking up some stuff with that.
Yeah. Well, no, it's kind of to hark back to what I was talking about at the beginning, though, is when you see it from the outside perspective, you think this is this huge community and these monster players that you might see in the modern world. You know, the guys like yourself, Andy Wood, and Ariel Posen. You know, the list goes on and on and on and on. You know, you think it's like one of those like unachievable things to really even talk or do anything, but there are so many avenues now where, you know, you put in a little bit of work, man. Like you said, you were 16 and just happened to be at one of his clinics, and now you guys have been friends for, you know, almost 2 decades.
Yeah, and I've
You
had
know,
some, I mean, in the last couple of years, some big full circle moments where up to this point it's like, you know, they always say don't meet your heroes, but every time I have, it's, you know, everyone's cool and everyone just loves guitar and loves music, and it's like that's the thing. But it is, you know, the guitar community and all of that, it day by day seems smaller and smaller, if
yeah,
anything. I mean, they're, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where I know he wasn't the person that coined this phrase, but Josh Scott from JHS, you know, you can use this analogy from just about anything. He was talking more so about pedal companies, but he said if you want to be successful, just stick around.
Yeah. So
You know,
much of it, I think that's as a player too. It's like,
yeah,
you know, you have to not throw the towel in for more years than the other guys are not throwing the towel in, because it's like, what overnight success is there? Every once in a while, sure, there is a true, just especially with the internet now, where it just goes crazy. But I think about like the quickest rises, the biggest things. Like I've known Kingfish since he was like 15 or so.
yep,
And I think especially from the outside in, it's like, whoa, he, you know, absolutely blew up that career so quickly. And it's like, he was out there gigging and grinding and practicing and working his ass off for years
yeah,
when people weren't paying attention. And then, yeah, he gained some momentum. And, you know, if you can get that momentum, throw gas on the fire, it can really work. But it's not like he didn't put the work in.
yeah. Well, it's one of those. So that, and it seems like the overnight success usually takes about 10 years, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, that's the other thing. It's like nobody cares until everybody cares. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it just, one of the days it just happens. You do something, you post something good on the internet, you play an awesome gig with some awesome folks. Maybe you get you know, an awesome direct support gig for a, you know, awesome band. You never know what's going to happen, but the main point is saying yes to these gigs, especially early on. Like, obviously don't do anything that like you would do, you know, to get taken advantage of, but you know, put yourself in those situations where you're going to be exposed to opportunities like that, you know.
And I think some of that's even like early on. Anytime I have someone ask me where it's like, hey, I want to, you know, do this professionally, be a performer, be a musician. It's like, what's your advice? It's like, early on, take every gig that comes your way.
Yeah,
Play the gig. It's like the money sucks. Cool, yeah, a lot of gigs,
yeah,
the money sucks. And then you can start. You get to a certain point. It's like that good old rule of three, where there should be two yeses. Do you know that one?
yeah,
Of,
yeah,
you know, the money, the hang, the music, and it's like you get to a certain point, and then you do really want to utilize that, because I've taken some gigs where it's like, I should not have said yes to that gig at all. I don't like the, you know, music, the money's terrible, and sometimes you get a 0 out of 3, and that's,
yeah.
those are really, you know, we've all had those gigs where it's like, do I really want to do this?
Yeah, the thing that I always thought was funny was kind of talking about that rule of three thing. It's like you got to have at least two of them.
Yeah.
They'll forgive the one, but you got to have at least two. You know what I mean?
You
You can
gotta
be
have,
a
it's like early on you can't. Like most gigs you're
sure.
getting early on, it's like I remember gigs that I'd do where it was, 4-hour gig and it was $50, but I was
You're right.
17
Yeah.
years old, and it's like this is an opportunity to go gig. Great. And it
Yeah.
wasn't music I wanted to play. And it's so rare you get a gig where it's a 3 out of 3.
Yeah. 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 Well, and I think once you, at least the players that I kind of know around here and players that I've talked to on the podcast, when it starts to get to that 3 out of 3, it goes back to their being authentic with their playing and with themselves, man. They're
Yeah.
doing what they want to do at that point,
Yeah.
and it takes time to get to that point. I had an interesting conversation with a student of mine that's really just cooking on the guitar now, and he is going to be a phenom in no time. I guarantee it. And the one thing I told him, he was talking about going down and playing with some guys in Nashville, some open jams and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, absolutely do it. You're going to have a blast. These guys, everybody's going to be super cool. But then he kind of was saying something about being nervous about, what if I don't do well, or what if I don't do this, that, or the other. I said, dude, just play, man. Just play. Because if you're going to be over there, you're going to mess up. There's going to be times where you mess up. It's just like how it doesn't matter if you mess up. It just matters how you recover from that mess up, man.
And it's you're right, because it's a fine line, because I think most musicians, a lot of artists, at one point or another, struggle with the perfectionism thing.
Absolutely.
I want this to be perfect. And you harp on mistakes, and I know a lot of early gigs for me went bad because something would go wrong, and it could be I screwed up a lick.
Yeah.
It could be the sound on stage sucks, which early on gigging, yeah, it's probably going to. You're not playing clubs with great sound systems, not generally working with the, premier, monitor engineers and everything. And I'd let that get to me. And it would be, you can so easily compound a mistake of you keep thinking about it. And my favorite thing about playing live is kind of that thing of you're only as good as the last gig you played. And I always tell students, and really anyone asking, it's like, you want to know the best advice I have for performing live, it's you have to have the memory of a goldfish.
Yeah.
Where as soon as it happened, you can think about it all you want in the car ride home after. But on the gig, it's happened, it's done, you can't take it back. And the only way you can make it better is get it out of your mind so that you can focus on the next thing you have to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons my big hobby is I love golf. That's kind of the competitive outlet and everything. And it's such a similar mentality playing competitive golf to improvising, because it's like you hit a bad shot, you're thinking about it, there goes the whole round. But if you just maintain that focus, you're fine. Like that one mistake won't really get to you all that much.
Yeah, it's that silly old adage of, it doesn't matter what happens, it's as long as we start and we finish on the right note, we're good. Everything in between will be forgotten as long as we're all tight at the beginning and the end.
Sure.
That I don't 100% agree with that, but it is fact for people consuming the
There's
music.
a lot of truth to it. Yeah.
There is a lot of truth to it, a lot. But yeah, the other thing that I was talking to him though too, I was kind of talking about that saying yes to the opportunities, man, and I was just like, you're at the point right now where if an opportunity presents itself, everybody talks about like, oh, it comes down to luck and who you know. It's like, well, if the opportunity presents itself, not only is it is a certain matter of luck and that sort of thing, but it's also, you have to be prepared for that opportunity. You know what I mean? You can't just expect it to fall in your lap. You know, if the situation presents itself and you get on stage with some monster players, you better bring it, man. You know,
Absolutely. And it's also like if you're sitting at home not doing anything, opportunities are not just magically going to fall out of the sky.
nope.
You have to, you have to go do something. You have to put yourself out there to some degree to have the opportunity for any quote unquote luck
Yeah.
to even happen.
Yeah. Well, and the thing I was telling him too, I was like, dude, you were growing up in like possibly the greatest marketing era that humans have ever had when it comes to social media, man. Like you can just have a video diary on your Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is. Like you don't even have to be like trying to do anything like seriously, but you'll start to get fans just by posting, you know what I mean?
Yep.
You start go playing live, man, and it just that's just going to compound on itself, you know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time. That's what I've talked to guys about, the podcasts and stuff like that, and it always blows some people away. It's like, well, what do you do to? I was like, I send them an Instagram DM or an email, like. It's not that big of a deal, you know what I mean?
You can get to almost anyone nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, well, and that's what I was talking to a few people about too. It's like guys and girls that do this professionally, I am always eternally grateful because I understand that you guys, your time is very valuable, and whenever you do stuff like this, it's really. It's very generous of your time to take the time to do something like this. You know what I mean?
I enjoy these conversations a lot. So.
Oh no, yeah, I just it's one of those things where though I'm trying the best way to articulate this. I've had buddies that do the same thing, and then when they don't get something back from a person, it's like, dude, you got to let that roll off your shoulder, man. Like that's not that big of a deal, dude. I send probably 15 DMs a week. There's been weeks where nobody responds back. It is what it is. It's no big deal. You just get lost in the sauce of the social media stuff, man. You can't expect these guys and girls to, drop everything they're doing just to message you back, man. But that's one of those things I was telling that kid about was, being prepared. Excuse me, being prepared. And networking, not only on social media, but the live jams. That's where the networking, man, at those live open mics or the jams or whatever, hang out, go play, but talk to people, man. Like get to know people. That's really what the networking is.
And that also comes down to like that rule of three.
Yeah.
People want to be around people they like.
Right.
In every situation, like I want the guys I play with to be guys that I like hanging out with, because you're, so much of gigging, touring, whatever it is that old hurry up and wait.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's like a lot of it is you are just hanging around, twiddling your thumbs between, load in and sound check to whatever it is. It's like, if you're cool, it goes a long way.
Yeah, well, that's a common misconception with a lot of people. I think that are have never done it or getting into it. It's just like, there have been full days where it has absolutely been awful, but it's not awful for like an hour and a half.
Right.
When you're actually playing and doing what you were there to do. The rest of the day sucks, though. You know what I mean? You're either driving half. Yeah.
Especially as a band leader, where it's rest of the band half the time they're eating dinner and I'm setting up the merch table. I'm trying to get on the venue Wi-Fi and get Square working while
Right.
you have all that stuff too, and it's like it's so worth it for the 75 to 120 minutes, whatever that set is.
Absolutely.
That night. But it's not Def Leppard in the 80s or Motley Crue backstage of show up in a stretch limo and party, go play a show, and then go back and party. It's far from that. I wish it was like that, but it's not.
Well, I mean, I guess at certain levels it still kind of might be, but from my experience, limited experience, most of the green room backstage is kind of like a lounging area where everybody's just kind of chilling out and relaxing these
And
days.
most of the green rooms are way worse than anyone thinks. Like most green rooms are
100%.
not places you want to be spending hours of your
No.
time. There are exceptions. There's my favorite club to play anywhere in the U.S., and I know I'm not alone in this, is a club up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Jimmy's Jazz and Blues. It's been open for a few years. It's I don't know, probably holds about 300 seated. You know,
Okay.
great like blues club, jazz club. They when they opened, Herbie Hancock played there. Like they've
Oh,
had
nice.
everyone at this point. Yeah, the Herbie story. He needs his piano. It's on a third floor. They shut down the main street and hired a crane, and there was like an inch on it. Crazy, but that green room's the exception. That green room's the nicest green room anywhere. It's nicer than my house. That green room's probably about 1,500 square feet, and it's like, fireplace and nice leather couches, and they feed you well, and it's yeah. But for the most part, green rooms are not where I want to spend hours and hours of my time.
No, no. It's the unglamorous for the, like you said, the 45 minutes to hour and
Yeah.
30. That's the glamorous part. But I like having people like yourself on to kind of peel back that curtain a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I always try to like inspire that next generation of player, but I also try to be as honest and realistic with them as I possibly can too. Because me sitting there, saying, "No, man, you're gonna do great. This is gonna be awesome for you. This is gonna, all sunshine and rainbows." It's not always that way, man. Like you're gonna have those days where it's just brutal, absolutely brutal on you.
And it's also like, what is the goal in
Right.
the long run for someone? Because I always say, like, if you're in the the music industry as a performer solely to make money, you're in the wrong industry. There are so many industries that are a lot easier to, not that it's at all impossible in this industry, but easier to not guarantee, but have a good chance of good financial success. But it's like,
For sure.
I could never see myself doing anything except for this.
Yeah.
When that's the case, it's like the best thing you can possibly do, but you're gonna have to work your ass off. You're gonna have to really, put in those hours, play the gigs you don't want to, do things maybe that aren't things you saw yourself doing as part of this, because it's also like modern music industry. I think almost every artist, especially in the fledgling stages, if you want to be the artist at the top of the bill, like, you have to be part marketer, you have to be part all these other hats that likely are not the reason why at 13, at 14, you're like, hey, I want to be a musician.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good thing and a bad thing. Having all the ownership on you is quite a lot of work, but you don't have to deal with that third party, if you're doing that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of catch-22 things. Like, yeah, you're going to be working your ass off, but it's all yours, man. That's one of the best pieces of advice that I've tried to give people. It's just, try to do the best you can, with help from your friends, but, do the best you can for yourself on your own,
Sure.
And it will, but the good thing is usually if a career starts to blossom outside of a point where you can't manage it anymore by yourself, you've probably already surrounded yourself with people that can help you get to that next easier level of kind of delegating some of that stuff out.
Yeah.
Well, I think that will be good for our main episode. Before we wrap this up, where can everybody find you at, Seth?
Website is very easy, www.sethrosenbloom.com. Instagram at Seth Rosenbloom, and all the recordings, all the music is on, Amazon, as well as your favorite streaming website, iTunes, Spotify, all of that.
Awesome. Well, I will have all that linked down below, so you guys need to go down in the show notes and check out all the awesome stuff that Seth has. And for Seth and all of you guys, we will check you guys next week on Man the Helm podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.